think we can get going. Pat's here, so we can start. I'd like to welcome everybody. Follow up on Chris Lee's welcome at dinner to the 13th Almost Heaven Star Party. We had a good night last night, although most people didn't set up their telescopes. It did clear up for quite a while after dinner time. Hopefully we'll have a couple more nights like that for the rest of the weekend. And hopefully you're staying long enough to enjoy it. Our keynote speaker, and he truly is a keynote at this event, is Dr. Mike Reynolds, who's a professor at Florida State College, Jacksonville. And he's executive director of ALPO, Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. He's been a planetarium educator. It's a problem my father always used to make, observatory planetarium. And he's spoken at events in this area before. People from Novak have heard him. He's a very inspiring speaker, and his topic tonight is truly a keynote in that he's going to talk about why we're here as observers and amateur astronomers and the joys of observing. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Mike Reynolds.
Thanks, Alan. When Alan and I talked about what would be a nice opening talk, I knew we were going to talk about the eclipse, which, by the way, today is July 21st. August 21st is quickly approaching. Of course, we're going to spend Monday afternoon talking about the eclipse, and there'll be an occasional eclipse reference in here. I just couldn't not do that. But we started to talk about what would be a nice opening, and we thought, why not talk about what brings us all together? Why we're in this arena of astronomy. I happen to be very, very fortunate that I'm a professional astronomer, but I'm one of these weird ones that knows how to find stuff through my telescope. And no, I'm not talking about GoTo, though I love GoTo. I'm talking about I came up in the era where we learned how to star hop without setting circles, for those of you who remember what setting circles were. So I thought it'd be kind of nice just to talk about our common bond of looking up, regardless if you like occultations or planetary or deep sky or variable stars or photometry, astrophotography, imaging. I think there's a common bond and interest there that really kind of helps bring us all together. And I think part of it, believe it or not, is that social aspect of astronomy. I've been very fortunate. My wife, Debbie, has joined me on many of these types of events. I just like people. I like talking to people. I like hearing what other people have to say. And maybe that's why I kind of enjoy teaching. I served a number of years as a museum director and then as a college dean. And I'm getting close to retirement. Right now I'm just tired. I'm not retired yet. And so I said, you know what? I want to spend my last few years back in the classroom teaching introductory non-science majors astronomy to most of those who come in there and think they're going to find out about their horoscope. Some of them do with their grades, but that's another story. So anyway, why do we do what we do? Why do we look up? Well, let's see now. Hopefully it's more than just that. Did I hit that magic button, Arlen, that you warned me about not to hit? Yeah, it is, isn't it? Oh, there we go. You think about looking up, and this is a photograph I took at Yosemite National Park in the valley. And you think about looking up and the richness of looking at the Milky Way or just pondering with a pair of binoculars, just some of those beautiful objects we all enjoy. And as I think about my own start in this will take a few of us in the room back to wooden school chairs. Remember, some of you don't even know what a wooden school desk is like, but that's what some of us grew up with. And my interest actually started with a fellow by the name of Alan Shepard. So in first grade, my teacher rolls in a TV set and says, boys and girls, today we're going to watch the launch of America's first astronaut. So this little 7-year-old kid went home and told his parents, who had backgrounds in business, he was interested in space. And I'm thinking, where did this weird kid come from? In fact, they called me their space cadet, and my mom told me that about 2 months before she passed away. She kept that secret all those years that I was their space cadet. So you think about Alan Shepard and, of course, John Glenn. Those are the things that really got me excited about space. And, I ended up learning things about the planets, the 9 planets. And those were the days that, the numbers of moons were memorable. Jupiter had 12, and Saturn had 9, and Uranus had 5, and Neptune had 2, and so did Mars, and Earth had 1. But today, they're solar systems to themselves. I got a chance to spend time with John Glenn, his wife Annie, a few years ago. In fact, let me go back to that picture. And when I was the director of Chabot Space and Science Center, John and Annie Glenn came to the Science Center because they want to see Gus Grissom's Liberty Bell 7 spacecraft. So I got a chance to tour them around. John Glenn was just one of the classiest guys, and people realized who he was. We're all running up to have their pictures taken with them and things for him to sign. And I asked Annie, I said, "Is John always like that?" She said, "Yes." She was kind of frustrated by it, but I got a chance to show him some things to the 20-inch refractor there at the Science Center. So memorable types of things. Well, I don't know how many of you remember your first telescope. This was mine, a 2-inch Gilbert reflector. Look it, we have eyepieces bigger than this telescope now. My parents didn't know any better. Second grade, they said, "We want to buy you something that you can look up with." By the way, much to my wife's chagrin, I still have that telescope. And there she is, about 20 more kind of like lining the house. So spouses, you need to give us, that's right, there you go. So anyway, I also ended up going to the Jacksonville Children's Museum when I was in 3rd grade. And we went to see the stuffed animals. We ended up going to the planetarium, and this old Spitz A1 projector, seeing this projection in the night sky, and I came home and told my parents, "Wow, you wouldn't believe what I saw." They just rolled their eyes, and here's now their 3rd grade son hasn't outgrown this. And I went to the gift shop, spent my milk money on a little chip of a meteorite. My parents knew there was something wrong with their kid when I did that. What kid spends his quarter on a chip of a rock from space? I mean, this is craziness. By the way, I still have that also. No surprise. And my parents ended up getting me a Spitz Junior planetarium. Some of you remember that. I'd go in my bedroom and I'd put on star shows for my younger brother and sister. And I started learning constellations. I mean, how many of us went down that path? How did we start learning the night sky? So we started learning constellations, and Orion the Hunter was obviously, especially for a 9-year-old, easy to pick out in the night sky. And so we went out and I started learning the constellations. My mom tells the story when I go out and observe with my Gilbert 2-inch reflector with a plastic lens eyepiece. She said, "I was always so afraid, Michael, that you'd freeze out there." Well, the only thing I could see through the telescope was the moon to begin with, and that wasn't very clear, and then occasionally a street light. But you think about going outside in those days, Maine the night skies were not as light polluted as they are today, and that's really a battle we've got to fight. It's a serious issue. I talked to my college students, and many of them have never seen the night sky. A wonderful poem by Ralph Hodgson. "I stood and stared. The sky was lit. The sky was stars all over it. I stood, I knew not why, without a wish, without a will. I stood upon that silent hill and stared into the sky until," back up, oh, well, what did I do here? Okay, so Arlen, what I need to do to get this going? Oh, there, thank you. Thank you, Alan. Okay, can you get me going there? Maybe I should just leave it like this. Wait, I'm space cadetting out here. Technology. For some reason there, by the way, guys, it seems to be automatically advancing. I didn't think I'd said it like that, but I don't talk that fast, as you can see. So, continuing, I stood upon that silent hill and back again from a comet we'll talk about in a moment, and stared into the sky until my eyes were blind with stars, and still I stared into the sky. That describes many of us in this room. Now, how many times have we been out at night and just stared into the sky, whether it be with our telescope or binoculars or just our naked eye, our cameras, our CCDs, whatever. And you think about that, it's written over 100 years ago, but how many of you does that apply to? I was very fortunate. My first comet was a comet by the name of Icea-Secchi. 1965 was a sun grazer you could see in the daytime. And I thought, all comets are like that. At this time, a kind of naive 11-year-old. And yet we end up things like Comet Ison, wanted dead or alive. So, sometimes comets can be disappointing, but think about it. How many of you saw Comet West? A couple of you saw, spectacular comet. No one ever talked about it. The press never talked about it. But then we come upon Hale-Bopp, which was spectacular. Hyakutake, which was spectacular. And things we could take out friends and family and show them in the night sky. Meteor showers. My first meteor shower was the 1966 Leonids. Now, those of you who know about the Leonids, they storm every so often. So here I was, a 12-year-old. My parents read in the paper the Leonid meteor shower was going to peak the next morning. So I said, do you mind if I go out and look at it? From my location in Florida, I saw 10,000 meteors an hour. An hour. It was like the sky was raining, like a waterfall. That was my first meteor shower. They're all like that, right? It's like, great sun grazer comets are all like that. Photograph on the right was taken by Vic Winter, the most recent of the Great Leonid storms. So I continued to get that bigger and bigger telescope fever. I started with a 3-inch reflector, moving up from a 2-inch to a 3-inch, one that Edmund Scientific sold. I would thumb through those catalogs and leave pages under my parents' pillows. So, like as a 11, 12-year-old, I got the 3-inch, but then I dreamed of bigger telescopes, the 4.25-inch reflector. That was big stuff to a 12 and 13-year-old. So, I started leaving those little hints, and my parents said, okay, we get the hint, but you're going to have to earn part of this yourself. So I started mowing lawns to buy a 4.25-inch reflector. Those were big things back then. And you think about I look at like Questars, Unitrons. Oh my God, those Unitron reflectors on the back of Sky and Telescope. It's called to you. It's just spectacular scopes. The 6-inch Dynascope from Criterion. Wonderful telescopes. And I couldn't afford them. But I learned some things that if you had the money, you could buy, like the orange tube refractor, Celestrons, Leonard Nimoy's. When I explore the real universe, I use precision optics from Celestron. Beam me up, Scotty. Cave Ostrola. I have an 8-inch cave and then a 10-inch cave. Just, really decent optics. And that's another story about getting your telescope when you order it, but we'll talk about that later. So, I think my wife doesn't want to hear this, but I'll read it anyway. He burned his house down for the fire insurance and spent the proceeds on a telescope to satisfy a lifelong curiosity about our place among the infinities. The strongest thing that's given us to see with's a telescope. Someone in every town, seems to me, owes it to the town to keep one. In Littleton, it may as well be me. Famous words written by Robert Frost in the Star Splitter. So, I haven't burned any houses down yet, right? But nonetheless, you think about when you get an opportunity to show people things through your telescope. Saturn, we'll talk about that, those reactions you get. Then I figured, the 4.25 is a pretty good scope. Why don't I build my own? For a science project in 9th grade, I ended up grinding and polishing a 6-inch f8 reflector. Now, That didn't go over very good with my family because I stole my brother's toy box, wooden toy box, turned it on the side, went outside and got some pieces of granite out of my mom's garden and put it inside to hold the toy box down so I could grind my mirror. Then I got red rouge from polishing it all over everything. Then, the ultimate is I decided to silver it myself. Not aluminize, but chemically silver it. And those of you who are familiar with the chemistry of silvering, forms something called the silver fulminate, which is highly explosive. My parents said, okay, next one you can buy. And I did things like lunar photography, which quite frankly were terrible photographs, but for a 9th grader, they weren't too bad. And again, grinding and polishing from All About Telescopes, an Edmund book. I mean, how many of us did that? How many of you ever built your own telescope? Just a quick show of hands. Okay, a couple of you have. I think it's one of those things just kind of, some people are crafts people and they're really good at building and making things. There are some amateurs who love building telescopes. Most of us enjoy more looking through them. And I built a couple. I actually taught a college class on telescope making. And ladies, you'll be pleased to know there were more women in the class than there were men. What about that? And they ground and polished 6 and 8 inch reflectors and turned out a group of really good telescopes. Then there came this little event in July 1969. A friend of mine, his grandfather was taking him down to Titusville to see the launch of Apollo 11. And so I went down there with them and still remembered all the people. Came back home, and like so many families in America, when that wonderful date came and Neil stepped out of the lunar module and onto the moon's surface, we were all watching. I turned to my dad. I said, you know what? I want to build an observatory. And I did. He let me have a tool house. He was going to build a bigger one. I converted it and then wrote a story for Sky and Telescope about the tool house I had built. And there it is, just a regular little tool shed that I had converted to an observatory in my parents' backyard. This turned out to be kind of like the local clubhouse. And even the police would show up to look through the telescopes. It's kind of cool to see that. Very, very special time as we watched Michael Collins stay in orbit while Neil and Buzz stepped on the moon. So I named the observatory the Michael Collins Observatory. Well, there was an event that really did change how I looked up. I had heard there was this little astronomical event, a total solar eclipse that happened on March 7th, 1970. And it was just north of where I live, so here this 16-year-old goes to his parents and says, can I use one of our cars and drive to Waycross, Georgia, about a 2-hour drive, to observe this eclipse? They roll their eyes again, say, yeah, it's fine, Michael. You can go ahead and go. And so my first eclipse is March 7th, 1970. I stood in the middle of a cow pasture where the cattle, its totality started, that second contact. Let me back up as we're getting ahead of the story here. For some reason, it's advancing. I'm not sure. It's trying to move me along here. The cattle started going towards the barn when totality started, as if it was night. Totality ended about 3 minutes later, and they turned back around, came back out to the field. I was just mesmerized with this eclipse, and 18 total solar eclipses later, I'm still mesmerized by them. And we'll talk more about that. Quick question, how many of you have seen a total solar eclipse? How many are you going next month? Okay, that's great. Do not miss it. Do not miss it. I know everybody has their different things they like to do, but I'm going to tell you what, you need to be in that path. It will be one of the most spectacular things in astronomy you've ever seen. And for some people, it's actually life-changing. Debbie's been with me on 10 of them, and we've watched people cry. We've watched people, not that anybody's counting here, right? We've watched people cry. We've watched people pray. We've watched people jump for joy. we've watched people enjoy Corona after the Corona. kind of fun. So 30 days, 16 hours, and 9 minutes. But who's counting? I am. So nonetheless, please make sure you get to see this eclipse. And hopefully the rain is getting out of our system now. My only question is, who bought the new telescope? Because, there's this, Murphy's Law that someone buys a new telescope that's cloudy for 30 days. So hopefully you bought it now. It won't be cloudy in 1 month. So we'll say more about this on Monday afternoon. There's 3 of us will be talking about the eclipse and an opportunity to really share some ideas and some do's and don'ts and a little bit about how eclipses occur for those of you who don't know a lot about eclipses. So it'll be a fun time. Well, the personal aspect of astronomy, that's what I really kind of enjoyed. I love looking up, but I like meeting you. I like hearing your stories. I like hearing what you've done, what you like, what you see. Maybe that's why I enjoy teaching so much. November 1971, there was an article on Sky and Telescope. Several of us, I was a precocious 17-year-old at the time, went to Memphis, Tennessee for the Astronomical League and Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers, we'll get back to that, convention. And I gave a talk about a cold camera I had built as a science project, but nonetheless, in Sky and Telescope, our local club called the Gators, which has reference to a movie called Forbidden Planet. The individual who navigated the spacecraft was called the Gator, and several of us had gone and were going to the University of Florida, which are the Gators. So, I guess I'm an Gator since my PhD is from Florida. It did it again. Arlen, thank you. I appreciate it. I don't know what the Space Cadet's doing, but something. I like this. Brian, by the way, took a great photo. Fast forward, okay, John, the telescope, what guys say? It is amazing, though. There you go. What shapes our lives. I would have never thought as a 3rd grader I'd end up with a PhD in astronomy and know how to point a telescope at something. We're getting there. And the thing is, I can't figure out what I'm pushing wrong. March 7th, what a day that was for me. Yeah, we'll get a chance to talk about that, timing, and back to this event. So, there's a skinny guy right here. I don't know who the heck this guy is, and he has hair on his head. Sideburns. Those of you who remember those days, those lamb chops were the thing. Those were the things. So, nonetheless, meeting people. And here I am, with members of the ALPO, not even imagining that many years later I'd be the executive director of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. We meet some wonderful people. I know these photos keep on popping up. Shelley Bonus at the Riverside Telescope Makers Conference. I love going to these meetings and conferences and observing sessions like this. Star parties. Dave Rodriguez. Just wonderful people who love sharing science in the night sky with the public. Shelley works at Mount Wilson now and does public events at Mount Wilson. Dave does his magic at Chabot Space and Science Center in Oakland. So fun stuff. Many of you have been to the Winter Star Party. Again, it's one of those opportunities to just get to meet people and see the night sky and sharing the beauty of all that there. All of us who've been to star parties, it's a kind of a reunion of our what connects us. So the Winter Star Party, a wonderful, wonderful event. By the way, that photograph right here, that's a barium cloud launch by NASA. I started to say barium enema. Maybe that's more like it. And by the way, I called this the Meade Scope of Death. That's that wonderful 20-inch that they came out with. It cost $50,000. And it's the only telescope I've ever seen that has death symbols on the telescope and mount. Because if it fell on you, you'd see stars for your last time. So, Antique Telescope Society. I love antique instruments. I own a Fitz refractor, wooden tube telescope, really kind of nice. And also, I like kind of collecting unitrons. It goes back to that, looking at those ads when I was a kid. This is a joint meeting of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada and the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers in 2007. And the fellow here is Walter Haas, an amateur astronomer who grew up as a mathematician and started the ALPO in 1947. What a legacy that Walter left for so many of us. ALPO, like AAVSO, it's one of those organizations where we have a nice collaboration of professional and amateur astronomers. And quite frankly, I think one thing that many professionals have discovered is what maybe you have known all along. Professionals need you. Need your observations. They need your help. They need your collaboration. And you think about photos like Don Parker took. I'll get to that in just a moment. And so many others that have contributed to our understanding of the thing about Mars, Jupiter, Saturn in particular. Fun thing that we've had over the last couple years is the American Astronomical Society and NASA has had a series of eclipse workshops that started on the West Coast and have progressed east. The last one was Columbia, South Carolina last March. And so those of us who are hot and heavy and developing programs for people, observing programs, public programs, training for teachers, have been in attendance at these various meetings over the last couple of years. And it was kind of interesting. They've been fairly well attended, but the last meeting, I'll talk about this on Monday, someone finally discovered or thought about the fact that, oh my God, 50 million people are expected to travel to the line of totality. How in the heck are they all going to get there on our interstates? So we had people from the Department of Transportation. I'll talk more about that on Monday. That's kind of those little carrots we'll talk about Monday. But nonetheless, that's been very rich also. And another little bit of poetry here. This is from Christian Huygens. Since 'tis certain that Earth and Jupiter have their waters and clouds, there is no reason why the other planets should be without them. This water of ours in Jupiter or Saturn would be frozen up instantly by reason of the vast distance of the sun. Of course, Huygens is well known for his observations of Saturn, and you know, as well as I know, how your first look at Saturn through a telescope was like. I mean, I show this to my students. Now, these are kind of cocky 18-year-olds that already know everything like we all did when we were 18. And they look at Saturn. And the first reaction, just like it is for you, when you show someone Saturn, is, where's the picture? Where's the little Saturn hanging? And I can't get them to leave. Lab's supposed to be over like at 9:30. 10:30, I'm still trying to get rid of them. That's a good problem, by the way. The fact that you see this interest, and often that little ringed planet right there that intrigued many of us, no matter what age we were or still are, is one of the reasons we capture the hearts and minds of so many people. This was taken with a Galaxy smartphone. It's not the greatest picture you've ever seen. Taken with a Galaxy smartphone to a 10-inch Dob. Keith Spring, a student I've been mentoring, just held his Galaxy up there and clicked it. That's what he got. Ain't too shabby compared to the day a long time ago when you used to use this stuff called film. Oh my gosh. I mean, how far have we come when we talk about imaging? That's a whole nother subject which you'll hear a lot about here in addition. Just wonderful, wonderful what we can do. These look like professional photos. Just think about Don Parker. Now, I hope a number of you got a chance to meet Don before he passed away. Probably one of the most jovial, fun-loving guys I've ever met. He was an anesthesiologist by day and a superb planetary imager by night. How good was Don? I was working on my PhD, and one of my professors wanted me to do a little bit of research on using hypered film for planetary photography, not for, what we normally used it for, deep sky. He said, I'm curious, Mike, if that helps with resolution of planetary features. So I said, okay, Dr. Smith, what do you want me to do? He said, you want me to go over and use the college observatory? He said, no. You know Don Parker. Why don't you go to Coral Gables and work with Don on this project? That says a lot. An amateur astronomer working with a PhD candidate? I mean, that says a lot about you, because some of you are just doing work that is a credit to your field. And it's kind of fun, too, isn't it? All those hours, we used to spend in the darkroom, now spend in front of the computer and massaging the images. So these are 2 Don Parker images, just absolutely superb. And a Hubble image, but you know what? Go back to Don's. Look at the Hubble. Go back to Don's. I mean, really? For a 16-inch Newtonian reflector, I don't know how many of you saw pictures of Don Parker's telescope, but it was the ugliest telescope you've ever seen, and Don would tell you that too. But yet, look at that. Look at the results. And you do the same thing. That's what I love about amateur astronomy, is that your results are fantastic. And sometimes better than Hubble's. On the left, Troy Hani put together a series of images he shot of Mars, and Christopher Go, who is an ALPO member in the Philippines. Really a nice image of Jupiter. Stuff like that. 30 years ago, we amateurs only dreamed about, and Don Parker kind of showed us how to do certain things. And now look at these. Just incredible what you can do. I think they're, you talking about on the image itself, some of that is clouds over the volcanoes, and some of it's a little bit of reflection. Yeah. And there's that big blue thing, that's the new water basin on Mars. They discovered. Yeah, you often find clouds that form over the volcanoes. And that's, I think, what Dan was trying to capture there. I even love lunar photography, lunar imaging. And I taught a college-level class in astronomical imaging last semester. And didn't have a big class, had about 12 or 13 students. Not all were going to be astronomers. There were some art majors. Isn't that great? Art majors in the class. There were some physics majors. There were a couple who were going to major in astronomy. But a couple just want to take us, they want to learn how to take pictures. And so some of the results they got were not bad. And yes, I love photographing eclipses. Lunar eclipses are spectacular. Not quite the total solar eclipse, but total lunar eclipses. These blood red moons are just quite gorgeous, as we know. That's not very scientific, is it? Gorgeous? Gee, money, what's wrong with me? Pleiades, we learn how to stack images and to massage them, as I call it, in Photoshop. Orion Nebula, I think about the first time I saw that as a kid, now taking pictures of it. And you guys take better pictures than these. These are just, I focus, pun intended, I focus mostly on eclipse stuff, but you take much better photographs than I do of like the Andromeda Galaxy. You look and all you do is open up Sky and Telescope or Astronomy and you see that. This is one that, the fellow, you've heard his name probably, Dan Llewellyn. He and I did this at the Peach State Star Party about a year ago. And I guess I've always gravitated, there's that guy had hair, he's put on a more of a Jupiter-like rotunda here. That's always been into sharing the universe with his students and with the public. I did have opportunities to do research. Some of you know I do a lot of work in the field of meteoritics. I've actually been to every continent, literally every continent. I'm collecting meteorites and studying craters. This is me at the South Pole. See, you can see, I'll make sure I don't push the wrong button, Arlen. That's the South Pole. See it right there? And I've done something that none of you have ever done. I've run around the Earth several times. So all you do is just run around the pole, and you run around the Earth, right? So anyway, as you can see, this is in the middle of the Antarctic summer. It's only 30 below zero without wind chill factor. I look very studly there, the beard and no hood or face shade or anything like that. My goggles are off. My gloves are at my side. I will tell you, since this picture was taken, all that stuff went back on. All right, there we go. Had a chance to lead the development, design, and then construction of Chabot Space and Science Center in Oakland, California, a very old observatory that's been basically staffed by an amateur astronomy club, the East Bay Astronomical Society, since the 1920s. Again, that's the type of richness I find with our community. Amateurs who can do that sort of thing. A little something about my background. As I mentioned, I've always been fascinated by space. Oh, there we go. And in my thinner day, I was one of those crazy teachers that applied for the teacher in space program. And lo and behold, I was one of the national finalists. And I thought, here I'm close. Krista obviously was selected and Barbara as her backup. And I can remember that day when Challenger exploded, and it was never, could have been me aboard that shuttle. It was more of, I knew Dick Scobie, Mike Smith, and obviously Krista, and Debbie and I got to be very good friends with Ron McNair's father and stepmother. So I would get a chance through Astronomy Magazine in most recent years to cover launches at the Cape. And so this is STS-135, the last shuttle launch. Now, most photographers would use a camera lens, right? Not me. I use an Explorer, 102 millimeter apochromatic refractor to get a shot. Only took me 135 launches to get it, but get a shot that once you zoom in on the actual cockpit, you can see the commander's helmet. Crazy. Only took me 135 launches to get there. But it's interesting, when the shuttle blasted off on its last mission, and especially when it landed, I've never seen people cry before, but they did at that particular launch. How many of us just love getting out and sharing the night sky with our family or friends? And then there's times we like that quiet solitude. Like me, it's called 2 minutes and 40 seconds on August 21st. Have our grandkids with us, but I've got their little stuff set up so Pop can do his photography. And you think about the starry night, how much all of us enjoy that. Well, it brings us back to why we're here. We're here because we have a love, a passion for something that's both tangible and intangible. We can look up and see the vastness of the cosmos, but we really can't touch it, can we? And I think one of the things that's alluring to many of us is there's so much still to explore. So much more we can see, and for many of us, so much more we can share with others. I like to always acknowledge those who contribute in one way or the other, whether it be as a mentor or as a best friend and wife. Those of us who have astro spouses, often they get tugged along on these adventures, sometimes not really wanting to go, but nonetheless, we get a chance to share our love of the universe with all of them. So, as I like to say, keep looking up. It's a wonderful hobby, passion that we all have. We love sharing with each other. We'll have a great weekend to look up, and in 1 month, 6 hours and No, it's actually now about 5 hours and like 49 minutes. We'll get another chance to look up. So, again, I'm so glad to be here with you this weekend. We'll get a chance to talk in detail about the eclipse on Monday. I brought a whole bunch of free handouts about photography. I know Dan Ward's going to talk about photography. He's absolutely a superb photographer. So I got some handouts on photography and checklists. And actually, if you've never seen them, some of those little ASP, Astronomical Society Pacific, pinhole cards. So I have a whole bunch of stuff for free. And Alan and I had talked. I've also brought along, we'll figure out when's the best time to do this, some books and other eclipse goodies that you may want to buy. So it's funny, Debbie and I went to the St. Louis Eclipse Expo. I don't know how many have heard about the St. Louis Eclipse Expo put on by the St. Louis Astronomical Society last month. One-day event. You're seated. Listen to this. 8,000 people showed up. 8,000 people. And I was astounded by how many families were there. You know, moms and dads bringing the kids, as well as those of us who have a passion or even a passing interest about astronomy and especially the eclipse. And so I had some friends from Florida, from the 2 astronomy clubs I'm associated with, that said, hey, Mike, will you pick up, some eclipse map books or some eclipse pins or eclipse postcards? And so I should tell Debbie to close her ears. So I went a little bit overboard and bought some stuff. So, I don't have a lot of stuff, but if you may see something that, that may ignite your passion or whatever. So with that in mind, let me just pause here and see what questions you may or may not have about looking up. I know it wasn't one of those things I should be able to give a test on. As college professors, we like giving tests, right? Questions. Not really a lot of stuff to question about, but what I really want to do is over the next 4 days, you get a chance to sit and talk. I want to hear about what excites you, what turns you on. Those of you especially interested in planetary astronomy, solar system work. You want to know more about the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. I've got some brochures about the ALPO. We're always looking, to recruit members. We have a great relationship with NOVAC. And of course, maybe you know that last year, NOVAC hosted the ALCon, and ALPO was part of that, and it was a great event. The ALPO members are still talking about it and so appreciative of the warm reception, not because it was, Washington, D.C., it was, August and hot, but the warm reception that we got from everybody. So, I just look forward to talking to people. Yes, sir.
Those students of yours that think they want to go on in astronomy, or what career advice do you give?
First thing I ask them, how's your math? Because math is a major cornerstone of professional astronomy. Second thing is, what are you interested in? Are you interested in planetary work? Are you interested in astrophysics, galactic, variable star? What excites you about astronomy? And I'll have some say, I like to talk about it. Have some will say, I love photography. So it helps me guide them a little bit better. For example, if you have someone who wants to be a planetarium director, don't necessarily have to take all that higher level math that many of us had to take, to be able to work in areas like astrophysics. So it really depends on what their interest is. And it's interesting you do ask that question, because I was just talking to one of my students. She's working on her degree in astrophysics, and she said, Dr. Mike, dang, you were right about all this math. I said, yep, that's true. And she's good at math. She's also a superb artist. I have another one who's at Georgia. She's at Valdosta State University in Valdosta, Georgia. And pretty strong math student. She said, I love it there. She said, the sad thing is there's not as many women in astronomy as you think there should be. I think that's changing. When I was working on my PhD, the group that hung together, they were mostly, they were all men. Sorry, ladies. But that's changing, I think, and you're seeing more and more women get into astronomy, and we just need to encourage women and people of color to get into the field. We need that diversity. And I think this eclipse may just be this Apollo moment for this generation. Yes?
I was curious about what you were expecting maybe we might learn from the next generation telescopes, like the 400-incher and these adaptive computer optics that are going to come online in the next few years.
I think there's two things. One is the technology. You think back, not that any of us were around when Mount Palomar opened to 200-inch. That was a crowning glory in technology back then. Now it's like, 200-inch adaptive optics. That doesn't, none of that. It just isn't what today's telescopes are like. I think the technology is going to help drive those next discoveries. Now, I think that you think about the hot topics in astronomy now. Dark matter, dark energy. I mean, that's a huge topic. What in the heck is this stuff? And what happens when we don't find it? I think we will. I think we're right on the verge of that. So those are some of the hot cosmological topics. Is there life in the universe? Well, a lot of us think, yeah, it's got to be there, but how do we see it, sniff it, lick it? Oh, you don't want to lick it necessarily. Touch it, hear it. Those sort of questions. How do you find what's out there? And do you want to find what's out there? Or do they want to find us? That may be the best question of all. So, would anything intelligent really want to talk to us? I mean, come on. So, I think those are just a couple of the hot topics. But the technology will really help drive, I think, that next generation of discovery. Because think about this. With the launch of the Webb Space Telescope next year, with these bigger adaptive optic systems, literally the sky's the limit. And a lot of those kids who will be running that stuff are in the classroom today. So that's why we need to encourage them. We need to get them excited. Well, it's easy to get them excited. Let them see Saturn. You know that. Let them see a total solar eclipse. You know that. So, yes?
So when you go to the line of totality, I know you like to take photographs, but are you going to do any experiments for polarization or anything like that?
Debbie, do I like to take photographs?
Yes, he does. And I do not. Just watch it, especially if you've never seen one.
Here, I'll get back to your question in just a moment. One of her first eclipses with me, I said, "Hey, babe, will you push the button on this camera for me during totality?" She said, "Mike, I'll go with you to any eclipse, but do not ever get another cable release or button near me during totality." She has a pair of Canon IS binoculars. She pulls off to the side, and she enjoys the eclipse. Now, I will focus, pun again intended, primarily on imaging, as well as I'm going to do some experimentation with a little bit of plane polarization. There's some of us are trying some ideas there we haven't done before. One of my grandsons is going to be doing some, he's at the right age for doing an 8th grade science or 7th grade science project, measuring the temperature, seeing how the temperature drop. And this has been done before for someone who's 12, temperature drop, how that correlates with percent of sun eclipsed. So, and it's, for me though, my focus really is the imaging. So, and there's a lot of good experiments people are doing for totality this year. A lot of really good experiments. Yes?
Has anybody studied where the worst traffic congestion is going to be?
Has anyone studied where the worst traffic congestion is going to be? I can tell you, it's going to be I-95, heading north and south to South Carolina. Probably after that, we'll probably be heading towards St. Louis. Was that I-65? And then I-35 heading from Dallas towards Kansas City and then south from there. I suspect from what the Department of Transportation people are telling us that probably Nebraska west until you get out to I-5 and California, Oregon, and Washington State there'll be less people. There'll be hot spots like for example, Casper. A lot of people going to Casper, Wyoming. But from what the traffic folks are telling us, I-95, maybe a little bit of I-75 that then goes up into Tennessee. I-85 maybe a little bit as you head out towards Greenville, South Carolina. But I-95 looks like that's going to be the bugaboo. In fact, they've said it's going to be like a hurricane evacuation with the traffic. That's both good news and bad news, isn't it? The good news, you have that much interest. Bad news, you have that much interest. So it's like good news, bad news. I'll talk more about that Monday.
Are they saying it's worse afterwards than before?
I've just heard that it could be even worse afterwards because everybody will be leaving at the same time. And usually everybody will be leaving at third contact. So if you're going to be one of these going to be driving up or down to see the eclipse, I would suggest at least waiting until the eclipse is over. It's like a launch at the Kennedy Space Center. Let the crowds, the hordes leave, and then enjoy the rest of the appetizer from third contact to fourth contact, and then head out. Yes?
How much is micromanaged, look into this, but what about going from Portland to Salem?
There's going to be issues there getting along I-5.
Astronomical Society is meeting in Portland, and they're gonna bus people down to Salem. And that could be bad news.
Salem is going to be one of those hot spots. You can almost go along the Eclipse Path. I'll talk a little bit about this Monday. You look at Salem, again Casper, Kansas City up to St. Joseph, Columbia, Missouri, St. Louis in particular, over towards southern Illinois, that longest duration, arm twisting type of argument is going on there. Who's got the longest eclipse? Over to Kentucky, goes through Nashville, then continues to head east. Columbia, South Carolina, they're expecting huge crowds. And then Charleston. The problem, of course, with the southeast, well, we know. It's called that thunderstorm issue. And so, and I'll talk about this again Monday. I got some interesting comparisons between the skies and what we might expect. The good news is I think the new GOES 16 weather satellite is going to be indispensable in helping us understand what may happen 2 or 3 days before totality. Yes?
So, it goes back to this question. We had a speaker last year who, and he won't name the name, although some people probably know what I'm talking about. And, he was talking about the fact, there's a huge group of people that are the Apollo generation.
And I'm one of
They were
those.
talking about the Gemini Apollo.
And I'm one of those.
And, that's the huge group of amateur astronomers that are there. And that now that we're getting older, and that we've had our fun with our toys, the hobby is starting to kind of apex and go. But I would argue with that, because, we have cheaper, better telescopes now and equipment than we have ever had.
Well, I think what's, go ahead.
My question is to you, what do you think of that? Do you think what it means is we're going from the government and these big programs that excite people back to the grassroots that have to excite people about amateur astronomy. What's your opinion?
I think part of what's happened to amateur astronomy is called the internet. You have more amateur astronomers out there we don't even know about because they hop online to look at Hubble pictures or pictures of an eclipse or deep sky object, and we don't even know about these converts to amateur astronomy. I can tell you this much. One of the most popular science courses, this won't surprise you all, in college is astronomy, because students just like to hear about the cosmos. Honest to goodness, my astronomy class is open to college, and they're filled within 10 minutes. Filled. And so I think that what we're seeing is a shift in the paradigm from our Gemini Apollo way of looking up to more of what, right? Cell phones, text messaging, that sort of thing. You know what I do in my classes? But again, talking about 18, 19-year-olds that walk in, it's like that, they've got that implant called a smartphone. Is several times during class now I have them Google stuff, and they really get into it. Really get into it. And believe it or not, won't surprise you either, I probably have, out of 100 students, maybe 4 or 5 buy a telescope or a pair of binoculars every semester. But a lot of them still leave saying, I'm interested. Debbie was at our last Astronomy Society meeting, and we had about what, about 20 students showed up. So I think the paradigm shifted. Again, our way of doing things is different than what this current generation does. So I think that we've seen a little bit of, that's just my feeling, it's a bit of a paradigm shift. Yes?
Well, you mentioned diversity, and we live in Northern Virginia, which is very diverse with a high immigrant population. We have a new observatory going in there. We have 3 Friday nights. Pete's going to talk about that Sunday. And we're seeing a lot of South Asians, people from the India subcontinent. We see people of Muslim faith coming in.
Mhm.
And I would argue that's what the next generation might be.
Could well be.
Is people coming in and they're raising their kids to be extremely science literate, and they are flocking to things like, observatory events.
I agree with you. My experience at Chabot in Oakland, which by the way is 8% looking like me, 92% non-white, non-Caucasian, is very similar to yours. It's that Indian continent, Asian law of interest, but you also find interest, like for example, Latinos, but they do it as a family. You have to attract the entire family, and when you do that, you have more success. We found great success taking telescopes to black churches and setting them up. So it's just, you have to look at it in a little bit different of a way. And so I think, what worked for me and my generation is going to be very different than today. It gets back to kind of what you were saying. It's, what is it attracts, and again, think about the family units there too. It's a great topic to talk about. I'm not an expert on, just like many of you have had, some experiences I can share. But Oakland really taught me a lot, because you're talking about a very diverse city. I remember kids coming up to the Science Center. We had these magnificent telescopes. They'd never seen a redwood tree, and they lived 2 miles from one. I mean, it'd be like, us saying you've never seen the ocean or something along that line. It just doesn't. You live 6 blocks from the ocean. It's just unfathomable to me. But that's the reality. So it's a great opportunity. And again, I like something else you said too. I love seeing the fact that, in fact, one of the things we had a great time with is those of us who were professionals in the Bay Area would often have this quarterly, like wine night. We talk about these topics, and what we talked about is why astronomy is a field that you see so many different religious interests in. You would think, well, science, religion, they can't mix. I would differ. I would beg to differ with that. With some, maybe not, but there's some that appreciate the universe for their beliefs. Again, another one of those great topics we could get into and talk about for hours. So I'd love to have you bend my ear on that one. Other comments? Yes.
I just wanted to share with you. You talked about taking your brother's toy box and turning on its side
Yeah.
in the mirror. It's exactly what I did.
Did you really?
I took the red toy box and I turned it on its side and I ground the mirror on it.
Hey, we understand how that works, don't we?
Yeah.
So was it your toy box or your brother's or sister's?
He's only a year older than me, so it was the shared toy box.
Oh, okay, that's good. Well, that's good. My brother and sister were younger, and my brother did not appreciate big brother stealing his toy box to grind a mirror on. That was craziness. I should have dug that picture up and put it up here. That was one of those funny ones. Alan?
I wanted to hear, did you have as much frustration trying to hypersensitize film?
Oh my God.
As it was good?
Well,
There was a promise out there of wonderful.
talk about hypering film. I don't know if you ever saw Don Parker speak, but he often would put in a slide of our hypering work. And he would talk about the fact he would take this hypering chamber that I had built and show his wife Mo and say, we're going to put hydrogen in this and put this in your oven. Well, you can imagine, those of you who knew Mo Parker, what she had to say about that. But what I found that the problems with hypering were everything from, making sure you didn't overcook the film, to your mixture gas is the right type of gas. University of Florida, we like using hydrogen. So you need to purge the container of hydrogen. My major professor made me design and machine my own hypering chamber. And he said, I want you to learn how engineers who work with astronomers, what they have to deal with. You need to solve this problem yourself. So, oh yeah, Alan, we could talk for hours about that. So anyway, what I'll do again later on, I'll get with Alan what's the best time and let him decide. You know, I'll bring out some eclipse books I wrote and some other eclipse goodies if you're interested. If not, that's fine. I'll sell them for 3 times the price today of the eclipse.
I think probably before dinner tomorrow.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that.
Too busy and too damn.
I know, yeah. He and I talked about doing it this afternoon, but, you know, eclipse books and eclipse filters do not like water, usually. So, anyway, thank you so much for allowing me to kick this off, and I really look forward to talking with you. Thank you.
And I want to just let you know, we have a lot of socialization around dinner time and later, especially if it's not observing evening. People will be hanging out on the yurt deck and they can talk with you there.
I love it.
Or you
I
can
love it.
wander around and see telescopes.
I'd
Thank
love
you
it.
again.
Thank you.